All right, let's get it straight to the point. I wasn't quite sure if I would make that video because I'm not quite sure where I stand on Iran US situation. On one hand, I agree with Iran because like they're calling out the pedophiles, they're calling out Israel as an enemy, and Israel is an enemy of most nations. But like what they're doing to their people apparently is hella wrong. But I read somewhere else that these protesters, like the amount of how many protesters were actually killed, is false news as well. So I'm not quite sure where I stand here and there. But maybe you people can indulge me. But like I'm not giving off like that's like a topic I was pretty sure, but not anymore. Not saying I trust Iran, but I'm not quite sure where I land on this one. Like on one hand, I like the people of Iran to be free, but like on the other hand, I think they are. And then on the other hand, like Trump saying always, like we gotta destroy that nuclear facility, which BB has always been talking about. Like he's been saying since like 20 years that Iran is close to building a nuclear weapon and we must intervene. And Trump is saying the exact same sentence. So that's why I do not trust the US with that kind of stuff anymore. And people in the comments going crazy about something that Russia said apparently in that video that we were going to watch together. He said that Russia is calling for restraint, and that's funny coming from a leader like Putin. And honestly, man, I stand more on Putin's side. If he says something, man, there should be silence in the room. But like people can't clearly read between the lines. It's either black or white. So let's go.
His timeline for Iran to make a deal from 10 to 15 days. That still puts it in line with the 2-week time frame that Iran had given to address the gaps after the second round of indirect talks with the U.S. earlier this week.
Okay.
What is the goal if there is a U.S. military strike?
Well, we're going to make a deal or we're going to get a deal one way or the other.
But with a military strike, is it to wipe out their nuclear program?
I'm not going to talk to you about that, but we're either going to get a deal or it's going to be
Yeah. He drops that quiet when it comes to the nuclear program question. Kind of curious what's up with that.
Fortunate for them.
And you said today 10 days. You've given them a deadline firm to make a deal?
I would think that would be enough time, 10, 15 days, pretty much maximum.
The talks focus largely on Iran's nuclear program, but the U.S. also wants Iran to give up its long-range ballistic missiles. And Iranian officials maintain their ballistic missile program is not up for negotiation. The Wall Street Journal now reporting the president is weighing a limited strike to...
I mean, fair. Why would you give that up?
pressure Iran to make concessions. The outlet reports, per People Familiar, the opening assault, which, if authorized, could come within days, would target a few military or government sites. People familiar with the matter said. If Iran still refused to comply with Trump's directive to end its nuclear enrichment, the U.S. would respond with a broad campaign against regime facilities, potentially aimed at toppling the Tehran regime. Russia is urging restraint. A spokesperson for the Kremlin says Russia continues to develop relations with Iran.
So you guys can read it fully. You can pause it.
And in doing so, we call on our Iranian friends and all parties in the region to exercise restraint and caution, and we urge them to prioritize political and diplomatic means in resolving any problems. Remember, though, back in June, the president gave a 2-week timeline for Iran to make a deal. Hours later, he gave the green light for Operation Midnight Hammer. Holly and Todd.
That is a very good reminder. Madeline Rivera live for us in Washington. Maddie,
true.
thank you. Let's bring in national security and
Like I said, I'm not quite sure where I stand on that. But like that's why I'm hella confused, because I could swear I saw the people calling out for a regime change as well, and like I'm always with the opinion of the people. I stand with the people. Like at least I try to. Like sometimes they're stupid and retarded, but like in general principle, I stand with the people. And if the people's calling for change, change is inevitable. So, but I'm not quite sure if they're actually calling for change, or if it's like some twisted story where like the US makes it looks like the people are calling out for change. Like they done that a couple of times. So not quite sure. I'm actually not quite sure. If the US says it's a bad guy, bully is always the loudest. And like I said, China is all quiet.
military analyst Dr. Rebecca Grant. Dr. Grant, thank you so much for joining us. So one thing the president is doing right now is being very
Can't negotiate with cancer. But that's true though. That's true though. And there's a lot of animal like behavior on this planet.
transparent and laying out step by step what is going to happen. You know, we're going to use military action if you do not make a deal, and the timeline is about 10 days from now. That's what he's saying publicly. But, you know, it feels like the Iranian regime is showing no signs of budging or even taking the president seriously. So where does that leave us? What happens next?
10 days, 15 days, we are in the countdown phase for potential strikes on Iran. Carly, we know these targets were briefed back in January, and let me be clear, this is not boots on the ground. This is most likely Iran getting its missile production sites bombed unless they agree to talk. They've said missiles are off the table, but no way will President Trump accept that. And you can see from the amount of forces we have over there, I mean, at least 7 destroyers for missile defense, an aircraft carrier, another on the way. Everything is in place for these strikes. It is time for Iran to make a deal and let those UN inspectors in as a start.
Let's focus on the timeline for a moment and pick up where Maddie left off. Do you expect...
Interesting, right? Let the UN in.
Let's focus.
Time for Iran to make a deal and let those UN inspectors in.
I mean, I get it. But I don't.
As a start.
Let's focus on the timeline for a moment and pick up where Maddie left off. Do you expect a potential attack to possibly be sooner than this 10 to 15 day window in an effort to somewhat catch the Iranians by surprise and to not completely show our cards?
Well, that attack could come at any moment as far as the force posture is concerned, because again, targets pre-briefed already. And remember, you know, this is not a big new war. It's not a long campaign. President Trump uses military force for very specific objectives. And so I'm sure U.S. Central Command, U.S. Space Force, everybody.
Not saying I'm on his side though. Not quite sure where I stand with him. But there's some messed up shit going on in that place. That's for sure. That's for sure. I'm not defending any actions if they're actually true. But, like, honestly, man, I don't even know. I don't even know anymore. So, especially with that topic. I know where I stand with Ukraine, Putin stuff. I know where I stand with the U.S. government and believing in who did, and I have an opinion on. But like this topic with Iran, but Trump said it was a mistake to be in Iraq. Like he was one of the only ones who said it. So like on some occasions I trust him. He was the only one who said taking out Gaddafi was a mistake. He was the only one. So please enlighten me. Whatever you guys think, I would really want to know. Because I don't know anymore. done my fair share of research, which I just told you about. So not quite sure, man. Actually, not quite sure. And if people are from there and like they're getting online through a VPN or something like that, reach out, because I don't know what's true and what's not anymore.
Else helping out is ready to execute now, and that's the pressure that's on Iran. Yeah, it could come at any moment.
Yeah, and Todd, that's a good point. I was thinking yesterday, what if it happens during the State of the Union address next week? Because, the American people want the president to focus on domestic policy, which of course he will be during that address, and this could be going on in the background. Wow. So only time will, of course, tell on that front. But Rebecca, I thought this was an interesting line from the Wall Street Journal reporting that Maddie read, just echoing it. If Iran still refuses to comply with Trump's directive to end its nuclear enrichment, the U.S. will respond with a broad campaign against regime facilities, potentially aimed at toppling the Tehran regime, because there has been a question about how the use of military action would lead to regime change when the Ayatollah lives in a bunker. He still has his loyalists in the IRGC. So touch on that for us and how regime change could actually happen with U.S. military
Country's
involvement.
3 times bigger than France. Do not forget
it would take a lot of pressure on the right points, and it's possible that there are leadership and certainly
America,
IRGC
Russia,
targets on that list. But I got to say, President Trump has been very clear that objective one is to get that nuclear deal really lined up. So I think military targets are top priority.
Iran should have the
it would be so great to see that regime gone. But no question, he's going to be working the missile, nuclear, maybe space launch target set as top priority.
Staying in the region, President Trump announcing that the United States will be contributing $10 billion to the Board of Peace, but also giving a stark comparison. Listen.
The United States is going to make a contribution of $10 billion to the Board of Peace. When you look at that compared to the cost of war, that's 2 weeks of fighting. It's a very small number. It sounds like a lot.
God damn. You heard that? That's why the military lobby will never stop.
But that's 2 weeks of fighting. It's a very small number. It sounds like a lot, but it's a very small number.
Putting all of this together, Dr. Grant, does the regime change that Carly mentioned need to happen in Iran for Donald Trump's plan for Gaza, the Board of Peace plan for Gaza, to ultimately take shape?
Well, President Trump says that even Midnight Hammer helped that out, and I loved that Board of Peace.
Because Israel wants it, and that's where I get suspicious.
Meeting yesterday. This is the path forward for Gaza. Don't forget
like
a specific UN resolution.
What I tell you guys, till now he didn't invade.
Has chartered that Board of Peace to go ahead. FIFA will build soccer fields. Countries are donating. It's a great pushback against China and Russia's diplomatic influence, too. So this is the way ahead for Gaza, and only President Trump could have thought this up and pulled it off. It's looking good.
Yeah, it certainly is a unique thing that you never see from presidents in the past, but it is happening internationally at this very moment. Dr. Grant, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian.
Let me know what you guys think. See ya.